Last fall I got this 1986 Dodge Diplomat running for the first time in 25 years. It's a legit factory police car with all the bells and whistles, and along the way somebody decided to paint it to look like a Blues Brothers tribute car. And she was down on her luck, but that wasn't going to stop me from making it run again and relive her glory days. And with just a little bit of work, we were listening to a tired police rig run for the first time in a very long time. Now before we could hit the road, brakes were a necessity, so we tackled all new everything front and rear. And what's a police car without police wheels? Oh, rings the ears just a bit. Perfect. Now as soon as I backed the car out, we got some major problems. The transmission cooler that loops through the radiator busted and filled the transmission with coolant, and on top of that, it filled the engine with transmission fluid. So when I found this out, instead of even trying to mess with the original engine and transmission, it was turbo V8 time. Enter 318 Magnum. This is a low mileage engine that's ready and willing for some power. After tearing it down, I was able to see that it is indeed a very solid engine to hold some boost. So of course, had to make some room by pulling out the original engine and transmission. Then it was time to build up our new engine. After a good cleaning, I could finally start reassembly. This included a new roller camshaft from Hughes, valve springs, timing chain and gear, ARP hardware, and gaskets. And you can't forget the most important part, fresh coat of paint. The newish transmission seemed to be a good one, but man was I sorely mistaken. And unfortunately, I didn't know that at the time, but we'll talk about that in a second. Once the engine was put in place, it was a simple task of just hooking everything up for a final assembly. With some temporary wiring and a carburetor, it fired right up and sounded mean.
Okay. Yeah. Woo, man, that feels good.
Then it was time to go for a drive. Except the transmission was of course junk and wouldn't take any gear, no matter what I did. So I deep cleaned the original transmission, put it back in the car, and now it was time for the drive. Since the car was running, it was lacking cosmetically. A quick and cheap $115 paint job brought it right up to par, but I quickly got wrapped up in other projects and pushed this car over to the side of the shop where it collected dust for the next 6 months. Now it's time to get this car turbo ready and make some noise, which brings us to where we are now at the exhaust shop at Sammy's to get some turbo piping hooked up.
That's straight up race car right there. Look at that. Got the 2-inch going over to the crossover, tying into our Magnum manifold up here. And then we'll show you the top side in a second, but look at that. Got the flow effects. Yeah, you know it's gonna sound good. Oh, I can't wait. Sammy does great work. Let's lower it back down and I'll show you what it looks like on the top side, because this is cool. Look at that. That's killer right there. Plenty of room. That's gonna look good. I think it might suck the headlight out of here, you think?
We don't have the turbine on it yet. I don't have the oil supply line done. Well, that's what I know. Gosh, it looks cool.
So now we're getting into some really oddball stuff when it comes to making a fuel system for a mid-80s Chrysler that has 0 EFI components available for it in the aftermarket. What we have here is a factory replacement fuel tank, and I've had to cut a sump because one, the tank is not deep enough for the fuel pump that we're using to actually fit in there, and two, we wanted to have some kind of baffling. So this is a sump to keep all the fuel centered right here, and then what we did was cut the lock ring out where the sending unit goes, ground it smooth so it mounts right there, and the sump is right here. And then we'll flip it over and I'll show you how I made some baffles. Now my welding, of course, isn't perfect because I'm not a welder, but I ran a bead right down the middle, then one on top of that, and one on bottom, and now we've got a pretty solid foundation for a sump. And I can guarantee you it doesn't leak because this thing sat with water in it for about a week or longer, and it did not leak a drop. So we're good on that front, but we're gonna go ahead and mount our pump in there and get everything sorted out and see how it fits in the car. Kind of hard to see, but there's the holes that I drilled into the tank. So you can see there's a little water dripping from where I was testing it, but you can just tell, I mean, that's not gonna leak. And those are the holes that allow fuel to enter in, but it will not let it leave. And that's the whole purpose of it. I really got to clean the tank out a little bit more, but it's, for the most part, clean. I just got to do a little bit more work to it. But that's exactly what we want. So we've got baffles on the top side, a sump, and it's going to really hold all that fuel in the pump location where we want it. Probably the most important part of any kind of turbo setup is making sure you got the fuel system to control it. Because if you run something lean, you're going to have some explosions. Now Holley, they've got me covered on this one right here. This is a beautiful die-cast retrofit in-tank pump. Now what this is part number 12-171, but it's a 450 liter per hour fuel pump, and on EFI, which was what we're using, it's capable of up to 875 horsepower. Now by golly, we're not gonna be running that much, but we have enough pump to support that if we need to. We have vent, inlet, and return on our fuel ports right here, and I've already went ahead and cut it to where our return drops into the bottom of the tank. Now what is really cool about this thing is, so you see this giant foam rubber gasket right here, you just have to cut one giant hole for this thing. You don't have to drill a bunch of little screw holes around this thing to make it work. Whenever you tighten it up, these things will swing out, as you can see right there, and it'll pull up against that foam and lock against the top ring of the tank there, and that's what does it. All you gotta do is drill one big hole and you're ready to go. So this thing is very simple to do. We've already got the tank set up to do it, so let's just drop it in and see how it looks. That drops in there, the wire's in there in place. Everything's plugged in. I tested the pump, make sure everything was working. Not that I expected it not to, but you never know sometimes. And look at that. And with this one, it was kind of fun. All I had to do was kind of trim the factory sending unit hole, and this was basically already ready to be mounted in there. So we'll take these little Allen keys, you lock them in, and that sandwiches that gasket in there so no fuel will leak out of it. And then it's just as simple as a power to ground. Now that we have our fuel tank done, we've got to have a landing pad for our fuel lines to run to. That's where our fuel pressure regulator is going to come in from Holley. This is a billet, part number 12-880, and it's got a boost reference port on it. Check that out right there. So it's fully adjustable. You can go from 4 to, I believe, 65 PSI if I'm not mistaken. And we've got ports for the inlet, return, and then this is our outlet port that we're actually going to go over to the throttle body that we'll show you here in a minute. Just ignore all my wiring. I'm cleaning all that up. This is all factory garbage. But we've got it hard mounted. Now we have a place to run our fuel lines. That looks great. What I want to do real quick is clean up the engine bay. As you can see over here, this side, by golly, it looks really good. That's all original paint. What I wish I would have done before I put the engine in, I wish that I would have just detailed everything, but I got in a hurry and I pulled the engine out and I just immediately slapped this one back in it, and I would love to have this thing looking good. So we're going to take our time, clean up the rest of this, and get the firewall, inner fender. Like I said, I've already cleaned this side and it didn't take any time at all, so it's not a big deal. It's just kind of a hassle getting around all the extra stuff, but it's okay. And then we're going to detail the engine because I actually had a battery fall over while it was running and cover everything in battery acid. So I got to clean up some of this stuff here that you can see that's rusted that I really took a lot of time to clean, but now it got covered in junk. So we'll take the belt off, clean up the pulleys, clean up the valve covers, the intake, and just make sure it looks a little bit better than what it did. So we have been going nuts with this thing. It has been a madhouse. And as you can see, there are tools and parts everywhere. My goodness, Dixie's loving it. She's having a great time because I've been out here a lot messing with this car. And what you can see is we've got all sorts of wiring, just craziness going on. So this car's gonna be doing some race car stuff. Basically, I wanted to do some weight savings and room of the engine bay and put the battery in the back of the trunk. Now I've got the basically the plate mounted down, and I've got the hold downs ready. This is just sitting here temporary because I had to reroute the battery cable up to the front of the car, and I have them joined up here. This is a starter wire, this is the main power wire, and this is the main power wire for our accessories. So all this is joined up to these lugs, and I'm going to clean all this up. We've got a lot of wiring ahead of us, and believe it or not, this is just how the factory left their harnesses. I mean, it looks terrible. Now, what the heck is all this wiring even for? Well, it turns out we've got some goodies. We've got the Holley Sniper EFI Super Sniper Stealth 1250. Now, this thing is amazing, especially in that black. It looks like a 4150 Holley just under the air cleaner. You wouldn't be able to notice it, but that's what's cool about it. And this thing is able to support up to 1250 boosted horsepower. Now, we're not going to be achieving that with this small block Chrysler anytime soon, but if we ever want to upgrade, we have the ability to do so. It's got 800-pound injectors, and this thing is amazing. So what we're doing right now is just trying to route it into the factory harness and make sure everything kind of lines up. I've got a good bit of my connections planned. We've just got to, you know, clean it up and make it look better. Again, this is factory harness right here. I've unraveled some of it just to make it a little bit better. But you can see O2 sensors plugged in. This is all coming off the factory harness. Plugs in right here. And then I've been able to route some of my wiring up under the intake and just make it look a little bit prettier. So that's what I'm basically going to be doing today. I've got all my fuel lines done. I had gotten new stainless pre-bent 3/8 and added all that in. I'll show you that. And then ran my fuel injection hose up to our boosted regulator. Already got my vacuum line plumbed in, and then we have our supply hose going over to the supplied fuel log from Holley on the Sniper. So this thing is going to be really, really cool and relatively simple. That's what's great about it. And we know we're going to have plenty of fuel and enough support and all the self-tuning that you could ever desire with this Sniper Stealth. And it's going to look so good. Got the fuel tank in. As you can see, we still got to wire it up, and I've got the wiring ready to come from the Holley Sniper. But as you can see, there's the main power wire for the battery, run up under the car, up tight and clear away from everything. And right here, this is the lowest point that it is, but thankfully, at least this right here on the frame rail will hit before it hits anything else. And if it hits there, it's going to rip a brake line off too, so we got bigger problems than that. So it runs up to the top of the car, and just take a look at this exhaust. I mean, it still looks so cool. And again, all we're running is just a factory 3/8 pre-bent stainless steel line. And what this is, to make the return and supply line, I just bought 2 pre-bent lines and stacked them on top of each other, runs in the exact same factory location, right up into here, into those fuel hoses. It can't get any easier than that, folks. Like, that's as simple as I can make it, and it's so easy to work on. Okay, so I've done some wiring here. I've just twisted some like temporary connections here. I went ahead and told it, you know, how big the engine is, what the displacement is, how many cylinders we're working with, what kind of Sniper EFI system we have. That's really simple. You just do, it asks you like 5 questions, you hit whichever one it is, and that's it. I've got that set up. Theoretically speaking, now if I turn the key to the run position, the pump should prime for like 5 seconds. And then we should hear the injectors firing up here, or at least some relays clicking. Oh. All right. Did you hear the pump? Let's try it again. Maybe that's just like bleeding pressure off or something. I've got a little gauge here hooked up, but that's good. That means that things are functioning over here. So the pump is priming, the Sniper EFI system is doing what it's supposed to do, and I need to see how much pressure we have. Right now it's bleeding off, but we've got showing 30 PSI, so it's probably too low if it's maintaining there. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust that. This one will run, I think it's on like 60 PSI if I'm not mistaken. So we're gonna adjust that regulator. Had to go ahead and put the heavier spring in it for the higher pressure. But we're getting there, folks. This is getting really close. I think I got it adjusted pretty good. It should go up just above 60 PSI. Yep, so it's priming. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna maintain that 62 PSI basically, just for safety's sake, because it might drop when it starts to run. Okay, I very crudely wired in a Chrysler factory electronic ignition box. I know it looks terrible, I get it, I completely agree. Trust the process. It's gotta get worse before it gets better, folks. But the timing should be pretty much right to get this thing to run, because it was driving earlier. I had it running and I drove it into the shop and I've rewired everything back. We know we're getting fuel. We know it's priming. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. And we should have spark now. If I turn the key, it should run. It should. Okay. Moment of truth. Did I do it right? Let it prime. All right. I don't think we're getting spark. Yeah, I might not have a good connection somewhere, or that box could be bad, for all I know. It was just sitting on the shelf. Let me go grab a box that I know for a fact is good, and then we'll pull a spark plug and just check everything. Okay, new box, better harness. Wow. Well, it ran. Okay, so something's working, but I don't know if the pump is doing anything. Let me get some of these wires off the exhaust real quick. Let's try this again. Oh, I see what happened. My coil wire came off because it's just loosely stuck on there. Let me grab something to hold it on better. That box is hot. Okay. Now that the power wire is on better, let's try it again. Let it prime. Now it's not priming. Interesting. My cranking voltage is probably too low. Let me charge my battery. Dang it. All right, we got the boost pack on. Let's try it again. It didn't prime that time though. That was weird. Huh. It's not priming anymore. Okay. Well, we know the pump's working, but we're not getting any prime like we were. Did I lose a wire? I did. Oh, I did lose a wire. Okay. I know that looks bad. I don't even want to pay attention to that, but it should run now. One more time. Ah, there it is. Uh-oh. Oh no, there's an oil pressure sensor. Oh no. Oh no. Dang it. But it ran. There's an oil pressure sensor port thingy that's open. Dang, there's oil everywhere. Ah, okay. Well, let me clean this up real quick and then plug that. Dang. God, that's everywhere. Okay, we got a gauge in the port for the oil pressure sender. We also fixed up a little bit of wiring. I had a fuel leak out back, tightened that up. It's all good to go, I hope. So tied up some wiring to keep from burning. And it was actually a good thing that this thing actually started pouring oil everywhere. I found a plug wire was off, so we were only running on 7 cylinders at that point.
So now, let's just try it again, see if it'll idle. We're not gonna go for very long because the accessory belt is off, so we're not circulating coolant, but I just wanna see, will it run and will it idle? There we go. All right, prime. Oh, we lost that wire, I bet, the power wire for the relay. But it did seem like it wanted to idle. That was awesome. No oil leaks that I can see anymore. So we're good, I hope. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and just call that a win before we make any more of a mess. I'm gonna get all this junk out of here and redo every bit of this. But that is awesome. That's really good progress in the right direction. And honestly, it goes to show you how really simple an EFI situation can be. I mean, you know, it can get a little tricky with, you know, if you're using a car that doesn't really have a lot of aftermarket support like this one does, but I made my own tank. Fuel lines were readily available, just hooked them all up. And you know, you can go as simple as you want or as crazy as you want. This one is honestly overbuilt for the application, but has so much more room to grow. So if you can go ahead and do it, you might as well just do it, because this thing is gonna be a runner, I can already tell. It sounds good, it's healthy, and as far as idling goes, it's pretty simple. So that is a really awesome step in the right direction. I'm so excited. The idle's gonna hunt around a little bit just because it's self-learning, so you kind of have to figure out where it needs to be. Plus, I don't know what the initial timing is, and you're actually supposed to tell it exactly what initial timing you have and what total timing you have if you're running a stock distributor, which I am for the time being until I get my actual distributor I'm running. But it runs, and we'll have to, like, you know, do a little fine tuning with it and kind of let it run and let it kind of self-learn. Now that we have some kind of direction, at least, we've got the turbo spinning up, everything's bolted together, we want to see about intercooling it. So this is what I have. This is a Mishimoto intercooler. It's fairly small because I wanted it to be compact and fit up inside the core support without cutting anything. We want it to be stealthy, so I got it in black, and this is the location we're aiming for. There's a transmission cooler from the factory I pushed up and angled it over here, and then I've removed this part right here, so I'm gonna slide this back, slide this up in here, and then figure out how to mount it in place. But I think that's gonna look really good and work just perfect for what we're doing. We've got the carb hat on with our 45-degree angle going down from 3.5 inch to 3 inch piping. And what we have over here is I've already added the turbine housing, but I took it back off because I have to drill a hole here. If you look closely, I've drawn a circle here, and that's exactly where we're going to drill it, because that's going to go to our intercooler. Everything should work because it's pretty easy to route and go up under the bumper bracket. But over here, Chrysler was kind enough to go ahead and set this car up for boost, because on the police cars, it had this factory air inlet. So when I take this off, our pipe should line up pretty nicely whenever we go over to here. Look at there. How convenient is that? Sweet. So we've got a perfectly cut hole for our piping. So we're going like this. Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, that's gonna look so cool. So we're looking into here. That works out perfect because we've got to do pretty much a direct 45 down, and then another coupler under the bumper bracket, and that's pretty slick. Look at there, guys. We've got our first piping in. And that's the thing. You got to start somewhere and just start making your way around. This is pretty straightforward. I mean, I didn't have to do anything with that. So we'll put a coupler here, run like a 45 down. We're planning on going up, like I said, up under the bumper and then into our intercooler. And the other side, again, pretty much the exact same thing. We may have to order some more couplers, but we've got it at least started, and that's what's important. There we go. This is what we've got so far. We've got the intercooler tied in, and we've got a 45 coming out and then going up, and we're going to add this 90-degree angle. It's going to go straight up, and it's going to go to that hole that was over in the fender, and that should tie this side together once we get those couplers. We're going to cut this one short, so I'm measuring up where this one needs to go. We'll cut it, and we'll have to figure out how to put a bevel on it of sorts. But until then, we can at least mock it up and just make sure it looks right. Over on this side, this one's a little bit more complicated because it's got to go up to a 90-degree reducer from 3.5 to 3. Here's what we got. We've got this nice little pipe here with a coupler in it. I need a 45 degree. I cut it just to see if it would fit to 90 here, but I need a 45 on this one. But we're just gonna do it just to test fit, and then I can pick up the right coupler. We'll put you in first. Let's go as far as we can. Okay. And now, this goes into here. Keep in mind the intercooler is not hard mounted yet. I did this so I can move it around for the piping. And then twist you around and get you to come in like so. Hey, hey, that works pretty good. Look at there. For never doing this before, I'm pretty proud of that. We got a coupler up here, tight. We got that one plenty of depth. This one's plenty of depth, and this one here. Wow. Not bad. There's that 45 we need going into a straight piece of pipe that then goes into a 90 at the very top, and that goes in through the inner fender up into the intake of the throttle body for the EFI. So that's it. This is done on this side. Once we get that correct coupler right here and then get hose clamps on it, we're done, folks. That is awesome. Really wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. Thankfully, Chrysler was like, yeah, we're gonna make this a little bit easier for you and build this car to hold and support an intercooler. Okay, we've got some tuning things we need to work out. I've got my laptop hooked up, and I've USB connected it to the actual Sniper EFI, so I can go to these tables here and check everything. So I've got gauges for basically anything I need. I've got coolant, RPM, AFR, throttle position sensor, the map sensor, air temp, IAC, all that good stuff that you need to really just check everything. But what's happening is the idle is like way high, and the timing seems right. It's 36 degrees all in, around like 2,500 RPM. So I don't think it's a timing issue. I think that the IAC, which is the idle air control sensor, what that does is basically a controlled vacuum leak. So what it does, it will actually open up and add a little bit of air into the throttle body just to raise up the idle, to kind of smooth it out, because sometimes it can only do so much, and it'll add a little bit of air just to kind of help out with RPM. Maybe when you have like a fan kick on, AC, or anything like that, it'll just able to raise and lower the idle based on that. Now what it's supposed to be is between 2 and I believe 8%. And it was bouncing all over the place when I was starting it earlier. So I'm going to try it. We're going to start it up and we're going to see where does the IAC go. So the IAC started to go down, but then it just, you know, kind of freaked out. Okay. Idling around 1700 RPM. The IAC goes down, but it's like it's bottoming out. So it goes so low that it'll start pulsing, and the gauge just goes like this. So let me pull you over here and you can see it. Hopefully you can see that, but what happens is this yellow line right here, that's the IAC position. So watch it once it cranks. It starts out at 60% open, which I guess is to help start. Okay. IAC is maintaining, and then it just drops. It starts fluttering, can't figure out what to do. It's going all sorts of crazy numbers. You know, it should be fairly consistent, but it's dropping down to like 0, then back up to maybe 20 or 30 or so. So I think that it's just trying to figure out where it needs to be. The problem is it can't learn until it gets above 160 degrees. So look, the IAC just goes nuts and then it just shuts off. So it just goes lean, and what we need to do is just do like an IAC reset basically. So to do this, we're gonna have to adjust the idle screw. What I did was I turned it in about 1 full turn, and every time you do that, you gotta reset the car. You reset the computer basically. So you cycle the key. Once you cycle the key, the TPS sensor will go back to 0, and that's the throttle position sensor. So right when I first did that, it was at 4, I recycled it, and now it's back at 0. And basically we want to get that to where the IAC reads between 2 and 8%. So we're going to turn it up, let it warm up, and then we'll start adjusting to where the IAC gets to where it needs to be. Now the IAC is reading 0. So let's get it to warm up. Coolant temp sensor is at 124, 125. So I don't have an electric fan right now, so it's pretty easy to warm it up. But I'm only turning like 2,500 RPM at this exact moment, so it's okay. AFR running okay, it's around, you know, mid-14s. I'll turn it down half a turn, let it calm down. So now the IAC's come up to 1, but again, I gotta let it warm up. I just don't want the RPM to go nuts. Coolant temp sensor is above 160, so let's turn it down. Whoop, too low. We went too low and the IAC freaked out. Try again. Oh, I don't want to crank. Let me check my wiring over here, make sure my ignition module isn't loose. Woo! coil is hot, hot, hot. Coil's hot, ignition box is hot. It might be too hot to crank now. Here we go. This is normally what happens. It gets hot and then it can't do anything. So hot starting is kind of out of the question. I'm gonna see if I can cool it off a little bit and then try again. Well, I'm confused. I let the coil and the ignition box cool off for a minute, charge the battery up, and we're gonna just see, does that help anything? The coolant temp sensors come down just a smidgen. All right, try again. Still not good. But it'll run for a split second and then it just dies. Well, the culprit is basically that old ignition box. Again, we're dealing with 50-year-old parts, and whenever you're running stuff like the Holley EFI, things get a little bit weird, so we're gonna fix that with this. This is a MSD dual sync. Now what this does, it basically takes the place of a cam position sensor and a crank position sensor and takes away all the springs, all the weights, and makes sure that all of our timing is controlled by Holley EFI. So it makes it so much more simple to deal with, so much more simple to tune, and it makes sure that we save the engine, because if we have too much timing under full boost and we cut fuel or something happens, the engine's dead. This thing will make sure that the engine stays safe and makes tuning just so much easier, way easier than having to deal with that old ignition system. And by golly, does it look good. I mean, everything we put on this car looks really, really good. So we're gonna take the old ignition system out and put this one in, but first, we actually have to index the harmonic balancer. We have to set this thing in at 50 degrees before top dead center. And that's as simple as measuring the diameter of the balancer, multiplying by 3.14, divided by 360, and then multiplying by 50. Simple, right? Yeah, absolutely. So when we do that math, we come up with 3.16 inches from top dead center to get 50 degrees of timing. So what I've done is I made a 0 mark, and then I measured 3.16 this way for 50 degrees, and then 50 degrees on both sides. So I now have timing before and after top dead center, just in case I wanted it, just for the sake of doing it. And then you wrap this around the crank balancer and then put this at 0, and now you've got your timing mark. Now when it comes to timing, of course you need a good ignition box to make it work. You've got a couple options to drive your coil, but the best one here is the Sniper EFI Hyperspark capacitive discharge box. Super simple to wire up. You can see it's got a nice harness that is included with it. We've got an orange light. That means that, hey, we've got some kind of signal from the coil, but we don't have RPM yet. Now to have a good coil, we've got the matching Hyperspark coil. Now that thing it's a pretty solid unit, I ain't gonna lie. You can see we've got a bunch of wiring still that we're sorting through. It's getting better as we go, but we have all the switched ignition power wires hooked up. We've got the coil wire hooked up, so we have a signal. We've got everything we need to. All we have to do is drop in the dual sync distributor, get it lined up, get everything ran for spark plug wires, and theoretically it should run. Let's find out. I'm gonna pull the cap off really fast just so we can make sure we have proper rotor button placement. What I'm gonna do, drop it down right in here. And there you are. Simple as that, folks. Now all we gotta do is plug it into our adapter harness to go from the Super Sniper over to the dual sync. And I'm seeing a light for our crank and cam position sensor. Sweet. All right, I've got plug wires done. I've got the coil wired up. I've got the ignition box flashing green. Had to do another wizard basically on this one to tell it I was running the dual sync distributor. So now
It's cranking, but it's not wanting to run completely. I don't know if I have my distributor set right, so I'm gonna take this timing light and I've got it set to 15 degrees initial. That's exactly what it comes with out the box. So if it's at 15 degrees, whenever I crank on it, we're good. If it's not, we might have to adjust it a little bit manually. Introducing Allie, the wife. She's great at this. All you gotta do is, it's not gonna run, so just crank it. Just crank it. You ain't gonna hurt it, I promise. Hold it down again. Just keep, yeah, whenever I tell you to quit, then you can let up. I think it's a little slow. Let me see what it's actually at, because it might not be enough. Okay, do it again. Okay, so it's actually at like 7.5 degrees, so I'm gonna advance the timing on the distributor to get it closer to 15 degrees, and once it's that, theoretically it should run. All right, now go ahead. Roll the key back, and then roll it back to run, but don't start it. Okay, let it prime. Now do it. Yeah, we're not, something's smoking. Oh, it's just coming out of here. Okay, try it again. Go ahead. That's the best it's ran since I've had it like started. It's right dead on at 15 degrees. Woo! Nice! Let's see what the RPM is. About 1,500 RPM right now, but I guess it's got to learn. And I need to adjust the idle for the IAC and everything still. Nice! Good job, Allie. You did it. You made it run. It's pretty quiet, isn't it? Holy moly. Yeah, once it gets up to 160 degrees, we can do some learning on it. But it's idling at around 800 RPM. Okay. The timing is off on it, but... Oh, well, no, it's not. It's not. It's adding timing. Okay. All right, now it's learning. So the IAC should be around 2 to 8%, and right now it's showing about 2%. 2, 3, 4, 3. Whoop. They got it too wide open, or not enough. Let me give it a little. All right, cut it off. Let's start it back. Let it prime. Okay, and start it. That ain't bad. I gotta hook up I've got the balancer with the pulley off of it, and I don't have a fan, so I don't want to run it too long. We got about 200 degrees just then, so not too bad, but we need to get the water pump working. We need to get a fan on there so it doesn't blow up, but it's running really good, and it restarts perfectly fine, because I was going round and round trying to get this thing to work with that original box, and I feel so much better. Thank you, Allie, for your help. That was awesome. You fixed it. Look at there. Well, the old police car runs pretty good with that Sniper EFI. We've got a lot of tuning and a lot of stuff left to do, but it runs. So next video, we're gonna take it for a drive and see how it does with the new Sniper, with all the new fuel system, see if it can do any kind of boosting at all, and then we're gonna see if we can tune it. It's gonna be exciting, so stick around for part 2. Hope you enjoyed this one. T-shirt, stickers down in the link below. Don't forget to subscribe, like the videos, make sure you turn on those notifications so you don't miss any more on this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.